Need water or beer or something?
Well, thank you for inviting me here, Don, and thanks for everybody for showing up. I appreciate it. It's a good crowd. I didn't expect this many people. So Phil and I just got back from Dallas last week. We've been traveling around the country trying to educate people about the USS Liberty, and we spoke in front of the Military Order of the Purple Heart National Convention, if anybody has heard of that. I see a couple of Vietnam vets. I know there's a couple of Vietnam vets here. Thank you for your service. That's not something that they said when you guys were in the military. They spit on you, predominantly. Yeah.
I wanted to get my car inspected last week, and the guy looks at my license and says, "Congratulations for your service."
Yeah, right. Yeah, when
He
I
still
was,
flunked me.
he knew something you didn't. When I was in the Navy, there was none of that thank you for your service, but then again, there was no spitting on us when we got back either. It's kind of like nothing happening. That just started happening with, after the false flag attack on 9/11 by our friends in Israel and here in our own country, so, which happened with the Liberty as well. But let me get started by again thanking Don, and I met some great people already. Kim, it was great to meet you. And
Thank you, same here.
and it's nice to meet somebody. It's always nice to meet people who know the truth. That's such a rare thing. It's like two different universes. You know, you could talk to people about what you know, and those people don't get it, and then it's like you're really wasting your time because they're in this universe and you're in this universe. And we're up against some horrible odds, but not too far from here. Has anybody heard of the Battle of Trenton?
Yeah.
By a show of hands? Okay, so we know what happened at the Battle of Trenton. That was and Phil and I were talking, by the way, Phil is a survivor of the massacre aboard his ship, the USS Liberty. So he was actually there, and he's going to get up and speak after me. And of course, the Battle of Trenton was very important because a lot of the soldiers were about to, their subscription or inscription was about to end. And Washington knew that. And so he had to do something. And he decided that he was going to cross the Delaware. And he's surprised, of course, as we learned in grade school. I think they still taught that. Well, they taught that to me. I was born in 1960. So here I shouldn't say here in New Jersey because we are close to New Jersey. I want to tell you a funny story about that too. But they taught us about the Battle of Trenton. Of course, he surprised the Hessians and he captured them all. No Americans were injured. But when news of the Battle of Trenton spread, that really generated something very important in a demoralized American, if I can use that term, if they were called Americans back then, I don't know for sure, but a demoralized colonial public, and people had hope. You know, it's hard to have hope nowadays, obviously, because it seems like as I said, there's so few people who understand what's going on. I mean, it's obvious to us because we see it. I like your shirt, by the way. Yeah, CNN is fake news and Infowar real. By the way, are you guys brothers? No. Okay, you kind of look alike. Well, that's true. It's like, what do we know? I mean, now we know. I mean, a lot of us knew, years ago about fake news and real news, and we kind of felt it. I mean, Don's been publishing his great newspaper. Now it's, what is it, 32 years?
32 years.
32 years. I mean,
I'm only 39 years old.
Right, I can't figure that out. Yeah. Child prodigy. But, that's very significant, and it's very important that a paper like that survives, obviously, because we're getting to the point where the President of the United States is not even allowed to say that both sides bear some blame. I mean,
You can't make this stuff up. You can't really.
You can't.
It's
right.
like an alternate universe. It's great.
That's exactly right. So and the latest is the Goldman Sachs Cohn guy.
He was offended.
Yeah. Well, he said, how dare you equate neo-Nazis, white supremacists, and the KKK with people who want equality? But what about can those people who want equality throw crap, feces and urine? That's okay though, right? So yeah, we are in troubled times. But we battle at Trenton. I mean, it could happen. We need a spark. You know, in Jersey it was called the cockpit of the revolution. Of course, now people call it the armpit of the revolution.
Which exit?
Yeah, right. What exit?
It's the Prados Road.
Yeah, right.
I used to work at Exxon with that big, you remember Prados, they showed that big cloud of smoke? That was all water. We cut down 99% of pollution the 30 years I worked there.
Really?
Everybody sees that big plume.
Where was it? What town was it?
It was at Exxon Bay Area Refinery, and the Sopranos, they would show this big, and then they insinuate that's all.
I never saw the show, but I know. Actually, I met the guy in New York City. Yeah, he just pulled in through the Holland Tunnel, and you know, if you're familiar with the Holland Tunnel, you know, you get that light right before you hit that light, and then you go past the light, and you get to West Street, and you make a left, and there were the Twin Towers. And I pull in, and I'm with this guy. I was doing like his courier job, and you know, I looked over, and about 30 feet from me in the blue Jeep was Tony Soprano, you know, the James Gandolfini. And so I looked over at him, and I never saw the show, but I knew who he was, you know. And I looked, and he went like this, pure, because he's from Jersey, pure Jersey. He looked over at me, he was like, and I was like, what's the matter? You too big to say hello? Can I curse?
Yeah.
Good. So he looked at me, he's like, hey, fuck you! Swear to God. And I looked at him and I said, hey, fuck you too! And his girlfriend was looking at everything, and then the light turned. And then the guy who was with me, he was a young black kid, and he's like, and he wasn't playing with his phone because there was none of that crap at that time. But he said, that guy sounded like Tony Soprano. I was like, that was Tony Soprano. I didn't even know it, but only in New York, right? How many people are from Jersey here? Oh, geez, really? Whoa, so we got 1, 2, 3.
I was born there, that's
Wait a
all.
second, you see this guy's like, all right. Where were you born?
Burlington.
Burlington, okay, so that's out west.
No, that's on the river.
Okay, right, but out west from, you know, the Tony Soprano.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
Land. Yeah, right, yes. That's what I'm thinking, because I was born in, I was born in Teaneck, raised in Paramus. Everybody knows Paramus. And then we moved to a town called Upper Saddle River. And one of my schoolmates was James Comey, the FBI guy.
That scumbag, his two colors come out.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Oh, he's impartial, what?
Yeah, right, I know.
I still remember that when he said I'm going to get her 15 things, a 6th grader going to put her away. He says, nobody can prosecute. I said, you got to be kidding. Then Lady Kelly sticks up for
when you get up that high, you play by a different, you know, set of rules.
But then those are the type of moments that people that know what's going on say, you just cross these people off. They're part of the problem.
Exactly, and that it is a huge problem. But you know, you're near Jersey. When I went into the bathroom before, and the door doesn't shut, the door doesn't lock.
Oh.
And so I'm like, oh damn, you know, I got to go to the bathroom. So I had my bag. I was actually going to change into some different clothes, and I had my computer, and I said, you know what? I'm just going to lay my bag on the ground and block the door. Once somebody feels the pressure, I'm not even going to tell you who did it. But at any rate, so I'm sitting there on the toilet. There's no like door or anything. You know, it's like in the Navy, right? And all of a sudden, somebody's pushing on the door. I'm like, I'm in here. You know, he didn't care. He just pushed the door open. He's like, hey, I've been traveling. I got to. I'm like, okay, sure. He did it, and another guy came in. So I'm there sitting on the toilet with no stall door, and 2 guys are in there. Well, I don't know what the other guy was doing, but I'm like, only in Jersey. You know, like.
Well, it's like in the Army, they don't have any,
right, exactly.
No barriers. I went to college in freshman year. They had like six crappers there.
Right,
And you can't sit there and coming in. So
absolutely. That's what I felt like, right?
Yeah, he's put a divider. He says a divider. It's the nothing that open.
Well, at any rate, I thought it was funny. Got a new guy coming. Pause. So, at any rate, we are. Well, anyway, let me tell you that we're traveling around the country, and Don had asked me to speak here, and then I suggested that because we are traveling around the country, trying to teach people about the liberty, that both Phil and I come here. And he said, yeah, it's a great idea. He said, well, do you think you can get Phil? What do you mean, can I get Phil? That's what I do. I put these events together so we can go talk to people. So we never know how many people are going to be where we're going to be, but we'll go anywhere to talk about the USS Liberty. By a show of hands, how many people are aware of the USS Liberty? pretty much everybody. Okay, so let's see. We know it was in 1967 during the Six-Day War, right? We know who attacked the Liberty, right? It was
Israel.
Our greatest friend, Israel, right? And how many people, by a show of hands, believe Israel is an ally of the United States? You're right. See, most people don't know that. Is that, you know, the fact of the matter is Israel is not an ally of the United States. And the reason they're not an ally of the United States is that in order to be an ally, you have to have a mutual defense pact or a mutual defense treaty. And there is no mutual defense treaty between the United States and Israel. The United States suggested to Israel in 1973, after they got their asses kicked almost by the Arabs in the Yom Kippur War, that, hey, maybe we should sign a mutual defense pact so this doesn't happen to you again, you idiots. And Israel said, no, that's okay. And the reason they said no is because allies have to share information with allies, and Israel doesn't want to do that. So they want to do whatever they want to use their network, their network of spies throughout the world, and they are called psionim. Has anybody heard of that term, psionim? We got a really good crowd here. Yeah, psionim means helper. It's the Hebrew word for helper, and that was pretty much popularized by Victor Ostrowski, the Mossad agent who came clean, right? You know, so people, you see, the problem is, as we know, that we're not supposed to talk about this, and that's what's so great about these meetings is that we can talk about it. You know, Don's meetings, American Free Press's meetings, you know, the Barnes Review. We've got you know, some familiar faces, I think. Matt Johnson's back there from the Barnes Review and AFP. And Don, you got another guy coming in here. You know, Vinny is filming this. Vinny films all of these events. Fortunately, Vinny was close by and Craig brought him here. Thank you for that. That's very important.
Freedom Palooza.
Freedom Palooza. So there are some events, you know, around the country that are happening. They're very important. Pennsylvania, Freedom Palooza happened pretty close to here in Kittnersville. And then they moved to a different venue. But even though it seems like it's hopeless, it's not. And the reason it's not is, and I used to think it was, but the reason it's not hopeless is because people are waking up. And Phil and I did an interview on a guy called the Red Elephants. Anyway, you've heard of that fellow, the Red Elephants? Vincent Fox is what he calls himself. But at any rate, they've got like 2 million followers or something, or 200,000 followers on Facebook, and he interviewed the guy from Charlottesville who put it on, Kessler, that guy. So anyway, this guy is up and coming. But, you know, I'm a baby boomer. I was born in 1960. Phil was born in 1946, right? 46? So we're spread out all over the place here in age, and so they named us, you know, different baby boomer. You know, you were a boomer, right? That was 46 to 64. And then there's Generation X, Y, whatever it is. And so this guy was saying that, well, there's a Generation Z now, and Generation Z knows what's going on. So there, he was telling me that they have a saying, it's called the Goyim know. And I was unaware of that, but in the, I guess the Jewish books, they say, if the Goyim knew what we were doing, you know, and so they're saying that the Goyim know. So that's Generation Z. So I think we're in good shape, and I know I've seen a lot of changes happening. So with this movie and book, and here's the book, it's called Erasing the Liberty. Has anybody heard of the book before today? Really? Great, excellent. Where have you heard about it?
I actually bought it.
You did?
Yeah.
What's your name?
Steve.
Steve.
Didn't read it yet, but I bought it.
Okay. You didn't read it yet?
I didn't read my book.
I'm going to have to ask you to leave.
I bought it about a month ago.
Really? Did you? Excellent. Okay. So you're just warming up, like. Right. Yeah. Well, good. Thank you. Are you from Jersey or?
From the Philadelphia area.
Okay. Great. Excellent. Well, how about you, sir?
I heard it from Don Moss.
Oh, you did?
I think he had a write-up about it.
Yes, right.
Advertising.
Yeah, right, exactly. Okay, great, excellent. Well, at any rate, what happened was that Phil was on board the Liberty. He was 20 years old when the massacre happened. Now, it's called the Liberty Attack, the Liberty Incident, the Liberty Event, but the only word that really is appropriate is massacre. If you study it enough, you realize it was a massacre. The Israelis said, "Oh, we made a mistake." Like if I shot you and I thought you were somebody else in your arm, and oh damn, that's a mistake, right?
10 times.
But if I shot you 5,000 times, which is what they did, over 5,000 armor-piercing shells were in the skin of his ship, that's not a mistake, obviously. They wanted to sink the ship. So there's a lot of reasons why, but a lot of things are tied to it. The assassination of Kennedy in broad daylight is tied to it. The fact that Lyndon Johnson was an avowed Zionist is tied to it. A lot of things. There was the Cold War going on, that's tied to it. But here it is, Phil was 20 years old, the ship's in international waters, and for 8 to 9 hours, the ship is being, and I'm not going to tell you this because Phil's going to tell you about this, but the ship's being surveilled. They knew it was, they even admitted, they caught them saying, yes, it is an American ship. Of course, it's a clear day, the flag is flying, it's perfect wind. Everybody on the Liberty has testified that the flag was up there, even after they shot the first one down. They put up another one. And again, I'm not going to get into the actual attack, I'll let Phil do that, but what happened was that when they found out, when our side found out that the Liberty was under attack, planes were launched to come to the aid of the Liberty. So, which is just, obviously that's what you do, right? While the planes were coming to the aid of the Liberty, they were called back by our own president.
And who else? And John McCain's grandfather.
Well, McCain, who was John, his middle name is Sidney, John Sidney McCain.
Okay.
He's the third, this
Right.
organism who's alive now. The one who created him, his father, he had just been appointed to the Commander-in-Chief Naval Forces Europe like a few days before. So this was kind of like a setup almost.
So like Pearl Harbor.
Yeah, Pearl Harbor,
like
or
9/11.
9/11. Right.
Yeah, 9/11.
So Silverstein gets the lease of the World Trade Center a month and a half before the operation was carried out. So he was just put in place, So, and he, obviously, they knew what they were doing. I don't know for sure, even after all the studying I've done, if it was a false flag. People have their own opinions. That's up to individuals to decide. However, what I do know is that the ship was attacked, and mercilessly for at least an hour. There were varying opinions about time, but they launched torpedoes. They used napalm. Sailors were trying to help the wounded. They would machine gun them. They machine gun the life rafts. It was just, that's why I say it was a massacre. So when I found out about this being in the Navy, I said, just like a lot of people, they're like, this can't be true. It's a conspiracy, right?
Failure to report the news as usual. That's how they got away with it.
Yeah. And so what happened was that I studied. I said, yeah, well, this is true. This really happened. But I don't understand. Why didn't anybody know about it? So anyway, my research got me to the point where I got angry, and I said, you know what, I'm going to go around the country and just teach people about the Liberty. Since I'm a disabled vet, I was going to go to my Disabled American Veteran chapter and talk to them first, and then go to the other 1,500 across the country on my own dime and educate everybody. Well, I only got as far as my own chapter because there were some Jewish members in there who I didn't know, and I didn't know at the time. I didn't really know who the enemy was. I wasn't wise to everything, and so I was really naive. And I'm probably still naive, but every day we get smarter. But as soon as I started talking about the Liberty, they attacked me. Kind of, oh no, it was and I was like, well, it was weird. And every time they would keep attacking me in a nice way, and they shut me down. And then I found out why later on. Of course, I didn't know then, but they have a playbook that they go by, and they know exactly what to say. So it wasn't until many years later that Phil contacted me. Actually, it was August of 2015. I was driving through Pennsylvania. I was driving through the mountains of Pennsylvania. We were moving from New Jersey. New Jersey is a beautiful state. I'm just joking.
It's the same size as Israel.
Yes.
Same amount of people, everything.
Same amount of Jews.
I've been trying to come around. Donna said, I like Israel, and the more I think about it, I'm leaning your way, way over there.
And
Jewish people are different than these SOBs that run those.
kidding, it's a joke. Delete that. And so we were driving, we finally got out of New Jersey and we, to Florida, to Panhandle, Florida. So we're driving through the mountains of Pennsylvania and Phil called me and, I had talked to him a few times, interviewed him, but didn't quite know what it was about. But it turned out he said, oh, I'd like to do something, maybe write another book, or, because he wrote one book called What I Saw That Day. Has anybody ever heard of that book, What I Saw That Day? Yeah? Okay. Yep. Great book about, basically it's a first-hand account of what happened on the Liberty. And I said, okay, Phil, well, I'm kind of busy, and I'd like to do something. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it, but to make a long story short, I got into the book, What I Saw That Day, started reading it, read it like 3 times or 4 times, went through it, did all my work on it, and we started working on another book. And then, thanks for stopping by. Then, I asked Phil, I said, well, Phil, that's great that we're going to do this book, but and this was prior to the 50th anniversary of the attack, the massacre on the Liberty. And I said, wasn't there talk about a movie being made about the Liberty? And he said, yeah, some guy wrote a screenplay. Anyway, it was going nowhere. So I said, well, you know what? I've never made a movie before. You've never made a movie before. But really, there should be a movie about the USS Liberty. Does anyone know what significance the USS Liberty has as far as holding a record for a Navy ship? Anyone? It's the highest.
Wasn't it the number of impacts and explosives that were counteracted by damage control by the sailors on board?
Well, they did actually, because they did such a great job shoring up the ship, they did teach that, and they continue to teach it. Well, they were assisted by a couple of ships finally after 18 hours of languishing there. And one of our good friends was on the USS Davis, the destroyer DD-937. They came to the aid and they boarded and they went down to the belly of the ship where the torpedo left a 40 by 40 foot hole and disintegrated 25 Americans. If they would have been able, the planes would have been able to come to the rescue of the Liberty, that probably wouldn't have happened. But the Liberty is the highest decorated ship in the history of the United States Navy for a single action. And nobody knows about it. So when I found that out, I made a decision. And I decided that no one is going to bury the Liberty story ever again. No one. So I got really angry. And I'm still angry, even though I'm joking around and happy and smiling. I'm pissed off. I'm pissed off because it's that one group of people that squeal and moan and say anti-Semitism and all that bullshit that means nothing because they want to silence you. They've been doing it for decades, and it worked. Doesn't work with me. Doesn't work with Phil. I don't think it works with you guys and girl. This has to be brought out to the public. The story of the Liberty has to be brought out to the public. And the reason it does is because once people realize, well, once the movie starts and it says a true story, and the only way that it could say a true story is if it was true, right? Well, but then again, right, who controls Hollywood and all the crap that, but yes, a true story, not based on true events, a true story. Once it starts, it says a true story, they go through the movie ends, and they say, you mean to tell me Israel attacked, our great friend Israel attacked a United States, an unarmed United States ship in international waters. They murdered 34 Americans. They wounded 174 out of a crew of 294, which is an over 70% casualty rate. And our own government covered it up for over 50 years, and I didn't know about that. That's gonna wake up a lot of people. So it's not just gonna wake people up who don't know about the Liberty, which is almost everybody. You guys are different. But of course, you don't know all about the Liberty. You can't. Only when you dig into it, you do. but it's going to also wake up people who make movies. It's going to wake up filmmakers. It's going to embolden filmmakers. It's going to embolden people to see what really happened. What's the truth? What happened to the Liberty? Why don't we know about the Liberty? How could we not? We know about all this other crap. And by the way, all that stuff about Lincoln, that we know, is complete horseshit. Lincoln was first of all, I shouldn't even get into him sleeping with men, but which most people don't know about, which is his choice, I guess. But I mean, we don't know.
Not that there's anything wrong with it.
Right.
Nowadays.
Yeah, right. Sleep with men, it's fine. Like the kindergartners who were taught about transgender reveal. So people need to know the truth, and the only way we're going to do it is we decided was by putting out a movie, because we have a book, right? And people don't read. They just don't read. That's the way it is. People don't read anymore. So, and even if a book comes out, okay, the book comes out, it makes an impact, and then, they put the book down and that's it. But a movie is different. People want to watch DVDs. Now, of course, we're not going to get the movie played in the movie theaters, because obviously it is very important for them not to get this done, not to allow this to be done. There were 2 people who tried to make this movie already. Both of them killed themselves, supposedly. Yeah. Phil could tell you about that. He was very close with both of them. And they had just secured funding for the movie, and they both died. So they don't want this out. People who understand what this would be, what this would do, get it. All of a sudden the light bulb goes off, and they say, "Yes, that's the way to do it. That is the way. You do that. That's gonna do it." Because there's all, we talked about the Holocaust, right? Yeah, here's all the evidence. It couldn't have happened. They'd still be burning the bodies. But it doesn't matter, because that's not something that's going to work. Besides, they can put you in jail for that, right? Maybe even here coming to America soon, even though we haven't. But then again, the First Amendment only applies to see, people don't realize that. The First Amendment applies to the federal government impinging on the states. When the geniuses who built this country put it together, they put the Bill of Rights in, the 10 amendments, the first 10 amendments, to protect the states from the federal government. Just because the Second Amendment exists doesn't mean that we can carry guns in Pennsylvania. If Pennsylvania decides that they don't want to have liberal gun laws, then they don't have to have them. That's one of the reasons I moved from Jersey. You can't get a concealed carry permit there. So I moved to Florida. Showed my military ID, they gave me a concealed carry permit. But the Second Amendment applies to the federal government, how it impinges on the states. They were all of those amendments were supposed to apply to the federal government, and how it, but then after the illegal war, the civil war, the Northerners applied the Bill of Rights to the states, which they shouldn't have. That's a whole other story, but we're screwed. There's a lot of things that have to be straightened out to bring the country back to what it was supposed to be. But getting back to the Liberty, there's a lot that could be said. But what we did was we wrote this book, Erasing the Liberty. It's called Erasing the Liberty because that's exactly what they have done. They've erased the history of the Liberty because nobody knows about it. I mean, I just think it's a national disgrace that the highest decorated ship in the history of the U.S. Navy for a single action, no one knows about it at all. What these men went through should be known to everybody. There should be already 10 movies about the Liberty. There's a movie made every year about the Holocaust, and that didn't even happen. But every year there's a movie about the Holocaust. So obviously they're indoctrinating people about the Holocaust. That's what they do. Obviously, slowly but surely, they did it. They got it done.
And no communism. They didn't even teach about communism, did they?
Right.
Because the Jews were in charge.
Exactly.
There are 8 major studios, everyone's run by a Jew. Half of Wall Street's Jew.
That's it.
And 1% of the world, they get 17%, 34 times the Nobel Prize. Yeah, because they probably all vote themselves in, too.
And even saying that, you can't say it. Even
No,
if you can't say the facts.
And those 99.9% think you're crazy.
Exactly. Thank
I
you.
like to get in their face, say, debate me, let me see your
Right,
facts.
but you see, it
Go
doesn't
ahead.
matter. But it
Just
doesn't
call your
matter.
name and walk away.
Right, but you see, that's the point. It doesn't, what you're saying doesn't matter, even though it's right. So the only way you're gonna get them is with a full-length feature
I
film.
mean, there's a lot of independent films out there, so you're not gonna get the major studios on it.
No, we're doing it ourselves.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, but we already have,
You get Robert Redford, his liberal buddies to join it.
yeah, I don't know. But people say, hey, what about Oliver Stone? What about,
Yeah.
they don't wanna have, they've already been approached about the Liberty. You know, I was just speaking with someone who knows Clint Eastwood, and he was approached about the Liberty. So, no, this is just something.
Clint's afraid to? What is it?
Oh, yeah, of course.
He's
Yeah,
a walking dead anyways, 86.
well, yeah, right. Richard Gere, he was dating the sister of a Liberty survivor.
Wow.
And the Liberty survivor gave him information about the Liberty. And Gere was like, my God, this is unbelievable. Why don't I'm going to make a movie about it. And the Jew said,
You never walk again. You never walk again.
you'll never work in this town again. So,
They control the media, they control all the media too,
They control-
all professors. They said 99% of the professors are liberal. From this generation, millennial idiots, and 80% voted socialist. How about that?
That's
What are they
right.
Googling? They Google socialist, what's come up?
right, Mel Gibson, same. That's right, that's right. Mel Gibson, you would think, yes, sir.
I had never heard of the Liberty incident until I read
Massacre, not incident.
Massacre.
Right.
Until I read My Awakening by David Duke.
Right,
And I was astonished, number one.
yeah.
Number two, what do you think the primary motivation was for Israel to take out that ship? And what was the objective?
Yeah, there's a couple of, theories about that. One is that, and probably the most plausible, is that, well, does everyone know what the Liberty did? What its purpose was?
Eavesdropped on the Egyptian.
Right, exactly. Spy ship, right, exactly.
Between the 6-Day War, between, what was it?
Well, it wasn't Egypt back then, it was called the United Arab Republic.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Syria and Jordan, right. Yeah, but it was a seaborne listening platform. So its job, it had 45 antennae aboard. One admiral called it the ugliest ship in the Navy, because its job was to spy. So it would just cruise, along the coast and just listen, pick up, electronic signals. So Israel knew the Liberty was there, they knew what it was, they knew everything about it. Johnson's administration was infested with Zionist Jews. He had more Zionist Jews in his cabinet than has ever been in place.
Even more than Trump, right?
Oh, yeah, more Trump, yeah, absolutely, yeah. He was Jewish, he was part Jewish.
Johnson.
Yeah, Johnson, yeah. His mother's mother, or whatever, was a Jew.
People get around, but
Yeah.
1%.
We probably all have Jews.
You get rid
A
of it.
DNA test.
What's it, Agostani? What's that one with the big IQs? Agostani?
Oh, Ashkenazi.
Yeah, Agostani, whatever.
Have a DNA test, you might be part Jew.
See, after reading 32 years and it's just starting to sink in.
Yes, Matt?
They want to ask you and Phil about the nature of the communication between the strike force and the ship. I think Phil stated that. I assume that the guy, I know that the planes were spoken to on the ship. And I assume that the guy didn't have an Arabic accent talking on the ship. What was said? And was there any other indication that the ship tried to contact as this is going on?
There has been a lot of conversation about, you asked about, when you talk about the accent.
Well, as the ship was being attacked, I know that people on the ship were trying to contact the strike force itself. Said you made a mistake, it was not excused, but they were trying to say. What was said? And did they try to contact anyone on land?
Reacting.
That did happen. I'll get through
Or
the-
going side.
Yes,
I get up in on that very quickly.
Hey, Phil, why don't you come up here?
Very quickly.
Hey, Phil, why don't you come up here? Well, come up. Yeah, come on.
Introduction.
Yeah, sure. All right, you want me to do it?
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't have anything,
Okay, all right.
I don't have anything on Phil, I figured you were gonna.
Oh, okay, yeah, sure, of course. All right. And I'm gonna finish your question.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. But Phil is, as I said, said, a survivor of the USS Liberty, and he was 20 years old when it happened. He enlisted in the Navy in 1964. 1964. I know more about him than he does. And so that means he was, you were 17, 18 when you went in.
I was 17, no, I was turned 17.
17. And Phil's from Colorado, and he's been married to the same beautiful woman for 34 years, and he's got 5 kids and 8 grandkids. Still got you. He's a great guy. We're separated in age by 14 years, but we're great buddies. You know, great Navy buddies. And when I met the Liberty guys just the last time at the 50th reunion in Norfolk, what you see in their eyes is just sadness. Sadness because they never got their story out. And that's why I got really angry when I saw one in particular, and I said, no one's going to bury the Liberty. Not while I'm here. So we put together a great network, including all of you guys and girls. And I just say guys.
I was going to bring my girlfriend here, somebody to talk to. She said, well, there was one girl in.
Why didn't you bring
I
her?
couldn't get her. She thinks I'm crazy.
You are.
She's crazy. She can't argue with her. She's
You are crazy.
She's 20 years younger.
Really? Cut that out.
They're into it, right?
You can be our last speaker.
Yeah.
You can talk about game.
Yeah. But at any rate, you know, Phil was on the Liberty, of course. He was there during the massacre. He was there. We waited 18 hours for them to come to the rescue. What a national disgrace. He took the ship, the damaged ship, all the way to Malta, to dry docks, to clean it up so like nothing happened. And he brought it all the way back to the United States, where it was supposed to go into Norfolk, which was at home port, but they brought it into a different port, so no one saw it, so they hid it. And then he got off the Liberty and he went aboard another ship, which was another well-known ship called the MASSACRE, and you can read about that in his first book, What I Saw That Day. But
You went from the Liberty to the Maddox?
yeah, yeah.
You're cursed.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. And you know, he went out of the Navy and then he came back in. So he actually has 2 honorable discharges from the
You
Navy.
didn't come back on the Turner Joy, did you?
You Turner Joey, you know. But and like I said, Phil's gonna talk to you, and you're gonna, you know, whatever questions you have, because he was actually there. This is a piece of history right here. I was only 7 when the Liberty happened. So you know, that was I was born in May 1960. It happened June 8th, 1967. So the Israelis, this is probably the most significant point and part of the Liberty story. What happened to Phil that beautiful sunny day in June is impacting all of us. And the reason it is because Israel, which they're not even as you guys, I'm sure you know, they're not even the real Israelites. Because tests were done, you know, Tex Mars is a great writer, and he has the book about that, or the Jewish DNA and the Jewish bloodline, something like that. But at any rate, the genetic tests were done, and the Jews who are in Israel have no genetic relationship to the ancient Israelites. The people that are alive today that have the closest relationship genetically to the ancient Israelites are the modern-day Palestinians. So these Jews are from Khazaria, they're Central Asian Jews, and they know it, just like Helen Thomas, she died now, but she was the one that, the old White House reporter, you know, the Jewish guy asked her, what should the Jews do? And she said, well, they should go back to, you know, Lithuania, Germany, Poland, which is the truth, that's where they came from. But in the alternate universe, nope, fire her, anti-Semitic, oy vey. So, but anyway, what happened was they were about to complete an illegal land grab. So and everybody knew about it. We picked it up, the United States. I shouldn't say we. When I was on WBAI radio in New York, which, by the way, right down the street from the radio station, Wall Street, they used to auction the slaves. on Wall Street, right there in New York. So that fellow who was on before, all this stuff he said was absolutely true.
The Jews are
Well, the Jews were the slave. They ran the translation, but I mean, the auctioneers would auction the slaves, so they'd sell them right there. As Dr. Tony Martin proved, that the Jews were the transatlantic slave traders. What happened was that prior to the massacre of the Liberty, the Jews that were in Israel didn't hold a lot of land. And then most of us have probably seen the disappearing map of Palestine. What happened was that they took the West Bank, and the West Bank, it means the West Bank of the Jordan River. That's what it is, the West Bank of. The West Bank, the Gaza Strip, the Golan Heights. So they had a plan to take this territory away from the indigenous population there, which they're obviously doing now still. And so what happened was that the United States knew about it, Soviet Union knew about it, and so the Soviet Union said to the United States, tell those Israelis to back off. We know about them. We're not going to let that happen. If they do occupy those territories, we're sending troops in. So this is how close we were to World War III because of Israel. The Soviets had got landing rights in Hungary. They were about to drop paratroopers as a buffer in between Israel and Damascus. The U.S. was about to go in too. So we were just talking to that guy in Dallas. He said he was, he got mobilized and he was right there. I never knew why, and I said, I'll tell you why. And I told him why. He never knew why. So, and the way that I knew is pulling all the pieces together of what happened. So the Soviets said, have the Israelis back off, and we'll back off in Vietnam. The Viet Cong will back off. Because it was just a war between, obviously, the Soviet Union and the U.S. So the U.S. told Israel, back off, don't do this land grab. And so what happened was that the Soviets did have the Viet Cong back off. There was a lull in the fighting right at that time. Of course, the collectively captured corporate criminal mainstream media did not report on it. And Israel still went ahead with the illegal land grab, which is the cause of all terrorism in the world today, as far as the United States is concerned. The reason is because prior to the massacre on the Liberty, the only terrorism that, does anyone know the only terrorism that existed in the United States prior to the Six-Day War? What country was responsible for terrorism in the United States? Well, anyway, there was a fellow. No, yeah, you can. There was a fellow who wrote a book called Blind Spot about counterterrorism in the U.S. He was asked to write the book by the 9/11 Commission, so it worked hand in hand with the 9/11 Commission. So I read it, and I was like, my God, you kidding me? Well, there was no Arab terrorism prior to the illegal land grab.
Was it Israel?
It was not Israel. I'll tell you, nobody's going to know. I didn't know. What's that?
England.
No.
Britain.
No. Prior to the Six-Day War, prior to the
Puerto Ricans.
What's that?
Puerto Ricans were terrorists.
That's right. Yeah.
Bingo. Puerto Ricans. That was the terrorism, and obviously there wasn't a lot.
FALN?
Yeah, right, exactly. So they wanted, independence, and so they actually even shot up for Congress. There were attempts on, Truman, but Puerto Rico, that was it. So there was no such thing as Muslim, Islamist, Arab terrorism. The only reason it exists is because of the illegal land grab. So if the United States would have said, you did that to our ship, first of all, that's an act of war. There are people who you will talk to today, especially in the military, who consider the United States still to be at war with Israel because of that massacre. That's an act of war. You do not do that to an unarmed U.S. ship in international waters. Who the F do you think you are? You're a little piece of crap. We run the world. You don't do that. You apologize, whatever. None of that happened. And go back to your own borders. Well, since they were allowed to do what they did to his ship to his shipmates, who he's seen blown to bits. And he's gonna tell you about that, because I'm gonna stop talking in about an hour. All right, 2 hours. Because they were allowed to do that,
6 hours.
they can do whatever they want, because they're Jews and they suffered and they're victims. So we have the right to just blow up Palestinians, shoot mothers in the head with guns while they're holding their babies, spray shit on their olive trees, cut their olive trees down, do whatever we want, put up walls, whatever. So the significance of his ship, the attack on his ship, is that if they were called to the carpet, none of this would have happened, and 9/11 wouldn't have happened. So this was the beginning of the modern era. This was a precursor to 9/11. If the Liberty would have been exposed, then we wouldn't even be talking about this. You probably wouldn't be wearing that shirt. But then again, if Robert E. Lee marched on Washington early on in the Civil War, the country would be a whole lot better place. Because we wouldn't have the impact, the filth, the garbage, the manipulation that's spewing out of both coasts, Wall Street and Hollywood, and destroying what used to be, the city on a hill. I want my country back. I'm going to do whatever I can to get this country back.
That's right.
So this guy, I'll tell you, this guy's crazy. I'll tell you why he's crazy. He drove from Colorado to Virginia to his son's house nonstop. Just like last year. I'm talking to Phil, I'll call you in case you get tired. Okay, Phil, you tired yet? He's amazing. He did the same thing on the ship. He's going to tell you about that right now. He was in. Why don't you tell him about damage control? Well, before I stop yapping, anybody have any? By the way, it was that reason that they were doing the illegal land grab, and they didn't want the Liberty to pick up the signals and then transmit that, because Liberty worked for the NSA.
Right.
So they had one of their antennas. It actually bounced signals off the moon. It's called the Trescom. And then it bounced it to Cheltenham, Maryland, where the NSA is. And so they would have relayed, okay, nobody's attacking Israel. Egypt's not attacking it. Nobody is. This is a preemptive attack. They're pretending that they're being attacked, and they're going to grab this territory. So that's one of the reasons. The other reason is that supposedly Israel was massacring 500 Egyptian prisoners of war in the desert. Like they say the Nazis used to do, they were shooting them and then having the other Egyptians push them in the hole and then shooting them. So they didn't want that coming out either. Another reason is, which I think is also, because they wanted to sink the ship completely. That was the plan.
Yeah.
Another reason is that they wanted to give the middle finger to the United States, because they weren't really close. Kennedy was the first president who realized the power of the Jewish voting bloc. But Johnson was the first real Jewish president. So they just wanted to give the U.S. the middle finger. The Zionist Jews in Johnson administration were whispering to Johnson what Israel was about to do. So, because they knew Fortis, all Feinberg, Weinberg, this Steenberg, Gold, Silver, I don't know, all these names. They were all there. It was a gold and silver cabinet. Yeah.
The 535 members in Congress.
Yeah.
How many do you think really know what you're talking about? I'd say 90%.
No, I will tell you
I'd
that.
say the Black Hawk is zero.
Nobody, yeah, nobody.
Less than nothing.
Yes, that's anti-racist. That's
He's
racist.
probably got an 85 IQ to run in the ghetto area. They're going to let it over like that.
Yeah.
Maxine Walters in the law. He's not a moron. He gets to a million.
How about the guy said that?
And they keep voting for these people. 97%.
It's over.
Yeah.
Let's all leave.
What do you think? 10% seriously?
No, not even. Nobody knows. Yeah, nobody.
That's 50 years.
Look, I researched the
Probably
thing.
knew 10% back
I
then.
researched the thing for 1 year.
Nobody.
I uncovered stuff that the Liberty guys didn't even know.
Hey.
They said it. Like, I didn't know this stuff.
Hey, man, just one question. You think we went to the moon, don't you? Some people say we didn't go to the moon. I can't buy that. You think they went to the moon? They didn't make that one up, did they?
Can I take the fifth?
Yep. Oh, my God. Go down to Newtown. They set that one up too?
Can I take
I was
the
down in Florida. We were talking about these, all my relatives, all 18, everyone's a concern.
Well, it is
This guy said there were 17 people killed I said, how can they get away with Newtown? Every time somebody mentions something, they're professional actors that go around the country, just answer these questions whenever there's a massacre.
Well, let me tell you, I went to Newtown, and so I sat in front of the firehouse for half the day. I saw Gene Rosen's house. I know what the layout of that area is. I would find it rather odd that students would stream across the huge parking lot of the firehouse, where they would have shelter, and walk along a busy street with no sidewalks.
I never saw a body.
And go to Gene Rosen's house to play patty cake. And Gene Rosen doesn't call anybody?
Well, they
Is that
say
normal?
the place was empty, they blew it up, and these professional actors from all over the world, every time there's a crisis, they come
Hey,
and
they're all
get interviewed
there.
by the fake news, oh, and they cry in tears, because they're actors,
Right.
they cry on
Do you trust them?
I don't trust that.
Okay, I don't trust that.
I don't blame them.
Do I believe they went to the moon?
And they say Pravda's bad guy, Pravda, Russia, it's probably more
Right.
honest than us.
Right, Pravda means
And
truth.
we, of course, we hate Russia now, because I heard that.
Yeah, of course.
Hey, newsflash, they're white, it's only 4%
Well,
of the vote.
Matt will tell you more about that.
There you go.
Yes.
Going in with your timeline, at what year did you come out with that $3.4 billion a year blackmail payment to Israel?
Yeah, it didn't happen, well, the Johnson administration, it was like nothing when Kennedy was there.
Yeah.
It was just a couple of million. They were getting their arms from the French.
Yeah.
The Johnson increased it dramatically.
Well, could that be a blackmail payment for helping get rid of Kennedy?
Well, you know, the CIA and the Mossad
Yeah.
are very close.
Yeah.
So they were working together for many years.
Right.
You know, so there are ties between the two countries.
Well, I'm sure that the CIA wouldn't want any ties to come back to them, so you outsource it to Israel.
I mean,
and
there-
they
yeah, of
say,
course there-
We
yeah.
want $3.2
Well,
billion.
of course there's recorded bribery. You know, yes, absolutely. That is, I don't know how much it has to do with it, but there is.
Coincidental time.
Yeah, well, there is bribery. That's detailed. And of course, the great Michael Collins Piper, who I was very close with. Yeah,